last 2 years, more data has been created than in all of human history up to that point. And it is exponential growth. But when you break it down and look at what data we used to have versus what we have now, a big chunk of that explosion has been in unstructured data. So an easy way to a couple examples: social media data, customer complaint data, where the data isn't in rows and columns like it used to be, where we had a consumer with their age and their this and their that. Now it's a lot of text. And so really I think that's where a lot of the new applications are coming from. We're starting to see them already. Things like sentiment analysis or word clouds were kind of generation one applications on top of unstructured text data like social media. But I think going forward we're going to see many more applications that are just being better and smarter about classifying text and being able to take that classified information, that categorized information, and turn it into business results to make better decisions. If you think of like a credit union, right? Someone's going to open up a new account. And I can look at the structured data that I've always used would be, have they written bad checks before? If they had an account closed for cause before? How many accounts do they have open? Or a lending account, looking at their credit score, and you say, well, now what can I add to that decision if I'm looking at unstructured or text data? Well, if you took me, for example, and I was mentioning this in the talk, but you can go out pretty quickly and probably get about 10 to 20 pages of information on me. So you'll find out if you go out to my Facebook and then get to my LinkedIn, or my Twitter feeds, you'll see that I'm married, I have one kid, I have a dog, I drive a motorcycle. You'll know my age, you'll know where I went to school, and so the question is, can that help me make better decisions? I think certainly on the marketing side, maybe not as much so on maybe the credit risk side. From a credit union perspective, it's still, we still have a long ways to go with just the basics in terms of CRM and credit risk. I would certainly be looking at maybe inventorying your potential data assets. Do you have a Facebook page? Do you have complaints data? And as opposed to saying, I'm going to spend a bunch of money to do this with it, become familiar with it, understand what your data assets are, both internal and also potentially, looking to get some external data assets. But certainly, as you look around, you have information on your CIF and all the things that but there might be things that are untapped that are sitting there, such as customer complaint data. Can I analyze that unstructured data for value? And I would say, start out with the low-hanging fruit, just doing that inventory and seeing if there's something there that you could leverage down the road. When I think of big data, I also think of just systems in general, because there's connections, there's systems, there's data, and you have to bring it all together in one place. And I use the analogy, when I started ID Insight, however long it was ago, 12, 13 years, 15 years ago, we were very focused. It was account takeover in financial services and a credit union involves, if I've got Glenn's information, I'm going to call and say, I'm Glenn, I'm going to call the credit union and say, I'm Glenn, I changed my address from somewhere in Minneapolis to somewhere in Dallas. And I'd call right back and say, hey, it's Glenn again, could I get a new debit card, credit card, whatever. That was account takeover 15 years ago, was change the address, request the credit card. Glenn knows nothing about it until I drain his account. And now it's becoming much more complex, and where that EMV piece fed in is account takeover, especially with digital banking now, when people are online. Now you're seeing the fraudsters being much more organized, where they're changing an address, or they may not change the address, but they'll change the phone number, and then they'll be inside the online account, and now I've got access to your account. I just changed the phone number, and so I route $40,000 out of there. What happens at the credit union? They pick up the phone, say, dear Glenn, we have record that you wanted to move 40 grand, is that you? And of course they're not talking to you, they're talking to me. The point is there with EMV and how that came to be, when EMV rolled out, at the time counterfeit was going like this, counterfeit cards was going like this. As soon as it came in, it dropped and shifted to card not present. And there was a whole kind of just all these things coming together with EMV and all the data breaches. So when Target got breached years ago, they were like the poster child for the terrible company that got their data breached. Of course, there's been about 100 since then, big companies. And so where we were watching is account takeover and a lot of this fraud wasn't happening. And in the last about 12 to 18 months, you can tell just by all the systems we look at that with EMB, everything else, that suddenly they're being exposed and exploited. And really there's a finite number of criminals, but they're getting much more smart about how to do things. And also with the new digital channels, it's enabling them to cut through things that they weren't able to do. And so I look at that whole ecosystem kind of really connected to the whole big data world, because it is data everywhere that you're trying to bring together in a centralized place. I really find it interesting. So we work with hundreds of credit unions, and the focus, the kind of laser focus on this analytics side of things, to get so many attendees and with such a focus, I think is fantastic, because your normal, I would just say banking conference has got 500 tracks, and it's hard, right? And credit unions too, especially as you get into the smaller credit unions, they just have a harder time getting kind of that level of rigor on something as specific as analytics. So that's the thing that's, as an analytics person, that's the thing that's I think been most impressive, is that these credit unions can get exposed to this very focused, very important topic. Because right now, I mean, data analytics, right? You hear it everywhere. If it's not in your resume, you better go figure out how to get it in there. So that's pretty impressive.